Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with a brand new series of videos for you starting today. This one is going to be basically, as you can see from the title, my top 10 Transformers. Specifically, this is going to be the top 10 Transformers figures that I own rather than like characters or anything like that. So I'm going to do one a week, obviously starting from 10, leading up to obviously in 10 weeks time or whatever it is, 9 weeks time, with my favorite Transformer that I currently own. So the reason I'm doing this series is because over the kind of since I started doing these videos, I've kind of done a few Transformers action figure reviews, but they've been really kind of random when they've come up. So rather than just kind of continuing to do that, I'm just gonna like do this basically, this kind of top 10. These are the figures I like, and then maybe I'll continue to do just some odd kind of Transformer reviews whenever depending on what I actually get. Now, before we get into like number 10, you can see from the video it's Bulkhead, Voyager Bulkhead from Prime. I'll just mention that in terms of my list overall, and what is and what is not on this, it all is obviously depends on what I actually own, of course, and for me, I only really got back into Transformers around the time Revenge of the Fallen came out and like Transformers Animated was on the air. So a lot of the figures here are kind of fairly modern, fairly new, but I think that makes it a pretty interesting list because I am only kind of fairly recently back into things. So my main collection consists of a lot of Transformers Prime stuff, a lot of Transformers Animated stuff, a couple of movie things, a couple of Japanese kind of import things, and obviously some of the newer stuff like the Robots in the Skies, plus a selection of kind of whatever it was called, like Universe Generations, Combiner Wars stuff, the kind of more adult orientated stuff. But that's primarily what I have, so you'll see a lot of that on the list and not a lot of like older stuff really. Well, no older stuff because I don't have anything else. I did first get into Transformers when Transformers Armada came out, and I did have a lot of the figures, but I don't have them anymore. Um, though I doubt many would actually make my list. Maybe one would, just because I do really like the Armada figures, even though they're severely hampered by their gimmicks. But still, I just wanted to kind of say this before I get into the figures to explain why maybe like I'm not talking about other things. I have like one masterpiece figure, but that doesn't really make my list, and stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of like super expensive Transformers. So in that sense, it's going to be a pretty interesting list because it's a lot of stuff that's probably still available right now to get for fairly cheap. None of the stuff I'm going to talk about is really obscure or rare. So it should be fun. But yeah, I'm going to stop the intro there and get behind the camera to talk about my number 10 pick, Transformers Animated Voyager class Bulkhead. So here is my number 10 pick, Transformers Prime Voyager class Bulkhead. Specifically, this is the Bulkhead from the Robots in the Skies Transformers Prime line, not the kind of first edition line, because that never came out over here in Ireland, and I never saw that Bulkhead for a good enough price to pick it up. But makes my list. I was a big fan of Transformers Prime, so waiting for Wave 2, which this Bulkhead was in, was really tough for me because he was one of my favourite characters at the time, and I thought this figure looked really cool. So yeah, here he is in vehicle mode with his weapons attached. Now this is obviously when they were kind of calling the Voyager line, I think it was Power Risers they were calling them at the time. So you get a normal weapon, this kind of seismic hammer thing. It's not really that great. And then this thing, like the big thing about this is obviously the gimmick. You push this bit down, the kind of wrecking ball bit moves forward, and it lights up. Red light kind of goes through it. It's not great. You can sort of see it doesn't really glow through the whole transparent plastic thing that much, and none of these things work that well. For a lot of, I think most fans would agree that the figures themselves were pretty good, and when they came with just like a weapon that they used in the show that was just made out of plastic, they were fine. But they were always let down by this thing. Like Bulkhead's one is a little bit better because obviously, like if you do this, it spins a bit. But still, like this is meant to be the kind of wrecking ball thing that his arms turn into as his weapon. and all of a sudden now to hold it, he has to hold it in his hand here, and you have to hold this back like this. It just never worked. So the power rises were definitely let down by these weapons, taking away what is a decent amount of the budget. You know, you have to put a bit of electronics in here with the light. It's a pretty hefty weapon for most Transformers, and none of it's really too specific to Bulkhead. And then, like, what is this bit meant to be? Like, look at this weapon. It's like, it looks like it's meant to be like kind of this kind of section of the back of the vehicle mode here, and that's meant to be like attached on like here or something. Like, it just doesn't work. I don't get what this is meant to look like. It's so weird. I'll mention again when I transform him, but the weapons are just make no sense to me. Like, even this thing doesn't make much sense, but we'll talk about those later on. Let's get to Bulkhead himself though in vehicle mode, and it's a pretty solid looking vehicle mode. You know, Bulkhead's obviously like a fairly big truck, not quite like a massive truck as he was, but really decent representation. You know, not much paint as you'd expect from the time, but this one's not too bad considering recent Transformers history with paint. You know, the lights are done well, lots of silver paint here, some yellow, some interesting kind of gunmetal thing for the grille. And yeah, transparent windows to further use the light up feature from the weapon, which again didn't work. I get the idea, like, that you stick it in and like it's all transparent when you have it lit up. Like, this whole bit is made out of transparent plastic, including the peg, and then when you put it in here, the light just isn't powerful enough to get the effect that they wanted. But still, you get a cool kind of Cybertronian type pattern on the window. Not really sure why they painted the windows kind of just a different color green rather than just putting like some black paint on the windows. The back's not as painted, you know, you get the bumper, rear lights, but yeah, no back window or anything like that. Front wheels roll pretty well, second one's not as much, but still it's fine, you know, it rolls back and forth pretty good. They're big wheels, pretty nice. But yeah, then the bottom, you can basically tell that it's a robot underneath. You can see the hips there, the knees there. These are hidden a little bit, and that you don't obviously know that they're the arms because you can't quite see the fists underneath, so that's good. But for the most part, you know, I really like this vehicle mode. It's pretty cool. But yeah, to transform him, the easiest place to start is at the front. You just basically take this wheel section here, pull it down, and then you do the same on the other side. Pull it down. You also just move this section out of the way. You just move the grey bit up at the front. Then what you do is you take the back wheel, tilt it up. That's on a whole panel. Take the other side, put it up as well. And you can sort of start to see how kind of compressed everything is here, just looking at it from the side. But yeah, what you do then is you take the arms, you kind of unfold them out a little bit. And then you pull the legs down. You can see the joint here. You pull it down there. You then turn the legs around. And then the feet actually transform really nicely. Like, you take this section here and pull it down until it locks into place. And then you just take this grey bit to make the foot. Then you do that on both sides. You can do it in reverse if you want. Do the heel bit down. And then lock this bit into place. There we go. And there are his feet done. At this point you can basically push this bit down. You can see the peg here goes into this slot here, and then this bit just comes down like that to make his chest. Then what you do is you get the kind of front doors, and it looks like it's complicated to kind of position them in front like this, but surprisingly enough, when you move it, whatever the way the kind of molding is done in here, it just kind of immediately locks into the right position you need. So all you have to do is just pull it forward and then tilt this forward, and you do the same with both windows. And there you have his main part of his chest done. you take these kind of back window sections and kind of move them out. You kind of open them up like this and twist them around, because the arm is going to come in from the back, and then you do the same here. Then what you do is you get the arms and you separate them, tilt them down. You could sort of see the swing arm that they're on here. You know, the joint is here, and you just tilt them out to the side while bringing the kind of this bit around to act as a shoulder pad. So you tilt the other arm around as well, and then this bit comes over as the shoulder pad. Then to finish off the arms, you put the fists out, and then you just fix the kind of shoulders. So you have to twist them this way so the joint is facing the right way, and then you twist at the forearm to have the forearm facing the right way. And there are his arms done. Then all you do is you just flip the backpack down, and again you can see the peg here slots into the peg in the back. There we go. And then to get the head, all you do is just you grab this little tab here and you flip his head out. A little bit of a tight fit, but the joint kind of helps you kind of get it out, the head joint. And there is Bulkhead in robot mode. Let me just fix the camera so you can see him a bit better. But yeah, overall it looks really cool. Like it completely gets across the bulkiness of Bulkhead. You know, the big arms, the kind of small in height but kind of wide legs, big kind of chest, torso area. Bulkhead does have a fairly small head for his body on character model in the first place, and then not a massive amount of kibble. Of course, the main thing is these kind of big panels here, but I don't think it's awful the way they're done, like just hanging off there. It kind of has a nice look. It's maybe not the most show accurate version of Bulkhead, but despite this being in most Transformers fans' minds the kind of lesser Bulkhead, the first edition one being considered the much better version, I still really like this Prime or ID version. I just think I like the legs a lot better. The first edition one, I think some of the videos I've seen, it's like it looks a lot more complicated to transform, and so some of the things on this one I feel are cleaner, like the way his arms look and then his legs come out. Now, of course, there's some paint that it could use, like it has kind of fake wheels here in the legs here at the sides, where you have the real wheels on one side and then it tries to get across the animation model that the other wheel is here, when in fact it's on the back. Maybe they could have painted that to get it across, but it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, overall the look I think is really cool. You can sort of see straight through him from the side, but based on where you'd have the arms, they kind of block that in the first place, so I don't think it's too bad. But yeah, let's get a look at the head sculpt there. I think it's really cool. Like, the jaw is actually on a hinge. Because of the limited range of motion on the head, you don't get a lot out of it, but you can sort of see it does move a little bit, and you can push it down just enough to where you can kind of display him with a tiny little bit of kind of his mouth is open. But it gets across Bulkhead's look from the show really well. And obviously, because of the way these shoulder pads are kind of hinged, you can actually like move them a bit, so they don't restrict motion of the shoulders too much, but keep that kind of armored look, including his Autobot logo. But yeah, universal kind of joints in the arms, and because of that transformation kind of swing joint, he has loads of motion in his shoulder area, including the bicep joint. Double hinged arms mean you can get really good range out of the elbows. The transformation joint here at the forearm only goes one way, this way, but still you can get some extra nice poses out of it as well. And then tiny bit, again, the transformation joint for the arms mean you can move it a tiny bit, but not enough. You know, it doesn't really have a wrist swivel. But overall, the arms I think are really well done. Therefore, no waist joint, obviously, because of the way everything folds together, but that's not too bad. Universal kind of a ball joint for the hips, upper thigh swivel, really nice. Knees bend just about 90 degrees, and you don't really get much posability with the legs, but you can move this this bit back a little bit, so you can sort of make a little bit of posability with the legs, but it doesn't really help too much. Thankfully his legs are pretty big, so like you can actually pose him a little bit, though the kind of back wings make him a little bit back heavy for when you're trying to do too many poses. But with Bulkhead, he's not the most agile character, so you don't really expect him to be doing anything too fancy with his legs. But what I do really like is just that his arms are super posable. Like his arms get across the posability really well. So I really like that. And yeah, as I said, the head is on a ball joint, and you do get some of the jaw motion a little bit. So that's nice. And these back wings can be posed a little bit if you want them to. Like you can have them like that, or just completely out like that. Now, there is this little port on the back that kind of moves in or out, where you can store his weapon. This kind of pulverizer thing, or you can have it up like that and sticking out over his head if you want, which looks reasonably cool as kind of like a back-mounted missile launcher type thing. But overall, I think you're meant to either use it in his hand or on his kind of wrist. I think the packaging shows it on his wrist, and it's kind of meant to be like a kind of ground pounder type thing, kind of like Frenzy and Rumble. And then as for the Powerizer weapon itself, you can also put it on the back if you want, but it's so big it just doesn't look right at all. Like really, it just doesn't look right. It sticks out way too much. It's just way too big. Like I get the gimmick of a light up weapon that has kind of like action feature to it, but the problem is when you just stick it in his hand, it just looks like that. Like it looks awful just in his hand like that. And yeah, the aim of course is to stick it out like that, but it only looks like it's a weapon when you have your hand there. The second you take your hand away, it's just back to normal. And so nearly everyone who got this figure modified it. And I've even modified some of my Powerizer weapons so they're stuck out like this, and I've opened them up to take off these weird kind of bits at the back. But it still doesn't look great because, again, Bulkhead's whole thing is that his arm is meant to transform into the this kind of ball-like thing on both arms. So, you know, I'd rather that instead of they doing this giant thing with lights and movement, that they just like made some sort of a thing, like a ball with an opening at the back and like a peg that you just put like slot over Bulkhead's arm to give him the effect from the show. I'd much rather show accuracy over an attempt at this gimmick. And you know, I get the kind of kid dynamic where they want the kids to have fun and have the lights and stuff like that, but I think even kids to some extent are going to realize that, hey, why can't I just put the weapon in my Bulkhead's hand and have him like punch my other figure like that without having to hold this in place like this and also do that. It's just so awkward, even just as a play feature. So the Powerizer weapon lets it down, but other than that, I really like this figure. You know, as well as I forgot to mention, the Bulkhead's leg articulation is not limited by the fact that this kind of comes down over the hips. This just moves up with it, which is really cool. So I like that. But yeah, Transformers Prime Bulkhead is my number 10 pick on my list. I'll see you next week with my number 9 pick.